Thank you for joining us. Thank you for this powerful meeting, and I hope we're going to learn from one another. And I would like to invite Miss Cheryllyn Dudley to actually introduce herself, and yeah, and you can tell us more about yourself, more about your book, and everything that you have done, and you can notify me when you want me to put up the presentation. Over to you, Dr. Dudley.
Great. I like the doctor bit. Yeah, well, I'm a mom of 4 children. I've got 6 children, and thank you, everybody, those that have taken the time to be with us this afternoon. It's great, and we definitely want to record and actually put this out for your use afterwards. My 4 kids have given us 6 grandchildren, and I've spent the last 20 years, more or less, in Parliament, and since then been busy writing my book, Through My Eyes, which I would like to make available to you. And a lot of the concepts that I chat about today, you will find somewhere in that book as well. It's 300 Rand a copy, and it can, with 80 Rand delivery fee, it can be delivered anywhere in South Africa. There's also a digital copy for 200 Rand. So that's also available, and that can be organized. And I've got the details, which we'll put up on screen a little later, in terms of how you can contact me to order and what you would need to send me information-wise. So that would be great there. So yeah, so I've been asked to chat to you today. Obviously, we all know this is Women's Month, and we're focusing on women. And so I thought I would just add something to the conversation, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation this afternoon. And more than that, just use it in our conversations going forward, particularly as it will be available on the different channels.
All right, now thank you so much. So you want us to start your presentation? You want to take us through what you have prepared for us tonight or this afternoon?
Yeah, no, that'll be great. Thank you. Well, you know, as I contemplate the words, the future belongs to women, I'm reminded of a time back in 2007 when I had been asked to speak to women at a meeting in Polokwane about going to Parliament. I'd started my talk with these words: women who are truly free do not pose a threat to men. They are trustworthy, generous, kind, have moral, commercial, and religious integrity, and they're competent. Such women manage their homes and businesses with ability. They speak with wisdom and not out of malice. They're intelligent, care for the needy, and are esteemed. All this I got out of Proverbs 31, you might notice. But it helped me feel a whole lot better than the idea that the future just belongs to women, in reminding ourselves of what we would bring in terms of that future. So I had arrived at the small airport in Polokwane late on the night before the meeting, and there was no one to meet me, and the cell phone network was down. Apparently this happened often. I waited, hoping someone would come for me, and eventually asked if I could get a taxi. I was directed to a small shopping complex next to the airport. It was mostly closed up and rather dark. When I found the taxi kiosk, the man on the front desk asked me to follow him through the back door where the taxi would be waiting. I felt a check in my gut, but followed him nevertheless. When I got to the car, the door opened and the man said I could get in. In the half light, I could see there were 2 men in the front seats and a woman lounging in the back. My heart was pounding. My head was trying to have a conversation with me that I clearly didn't have time for, and my legs just took off with my body and head in tow. It was now pretty dark, and I remember hoping I was heading in the direction of the airport and that no one was following. I could see the headlines: woman MP missing, body found in abandoned building, and questions like, what was she doing there at that hour of the night? What was going down? Was she on her own? Why did she accept a lift with strangers? All these things flashed across my mind, and I found the airport building at last, just as it was closing. Breathless and a bit shaken, I was out of options, and when a kind young gentleman working there offered to give me a lift to my hotel, I accepted gratefully. conscious of the many risks that we all take constantly and often without much thought. In that moment, my mind was working overtime, but I clearly had better odds with just one person in the car than 3. I'm happy to say that this kind and generous young man delivered me safely to my hotel. This was the kind of situation that arose often in my work life, as budgets for MPs were tight and the pressure of party work which relied on volunteers was significant. The next morning, my lift pitched up, my cell phone connection was back, and the night before was forgotten. I was ready to focus on the meeting. If we're going to make an impact in any way, I remember saying, we must first and foremost pitch up. This was true then, and it is true today. If we are there, wherever there needs to be, God can use us. Get there. Preferably prepared, but if necessary, unprepared and expectant. Of course, alive is also preferable. One of the things on my mind then that remains a high priority for me when I think of women making an impact is the issue of being defensive. Our own hang-ups, I said at the time, tend to make us difficult to work with. Difficult for men and for other women. One of many things I had to deal with when I first got to Parliament was my own tendency to be defensive. I was too quick to take offence and too quick to react. Interestingly, it was the ANC ministers, both male and female, that helped me with this. I was very aware of how they let themselves down when they were defensive and how easily the opposition could press their buttons because of this. Over time, I had watched many of these same ministers purposing not to be defensive and to answer graciously and generously. This elevated them in my eyes and made an impact in my life. I have found it is entirely possible to respect people with whom I disagree and to separate the issue from the person. For the sake of future generations of South Africans, I do believe we need to put down our defenses and stop being touchy, sarcastic, and quick to retaliate. We need to rise above petty politics and aim to become statesmen and women. Changing track just a little, I told my audience, some of whom had aspirations to go to Parliament, some who felt too old for aspirations, and others who just hoped to leave the meeting inspired. That the week before, when I met with Cardinal Napier, he had thanked me for the work I was doing and added, "You," meaning me as a woman, "can get away with saying what we men cannot." This rang true for me. Women, I believe, have a huge responsibility in this era of privilege, how we use or abuse our privilege. I was just looking at the slides and just thinking we could move them down. I don't know if anyone's there, Madeleine, just to move them down.
Yes.
So it sort of follows. Obviously, you'll see the prompting on the chat. So we would go down through Future Belongs to Women, through Story, through Get There, to Being Defensive, and on further down. So we're now in the era of privilege. And so I recall the saying that the abused can so easily become the abuser. How we treat people, including men, will impact on how our daughters and granddaughters, not to mention our sons and grandsons, will be treated in future. The words, "what goes around comes around," and "we reap what we sow" come to mind. Now, we've all been on the receiving end of condescending, patronizing, especially, we as women, and dismissive attitudes. And we all know it is not just men who often lack understanding and wisdom with regard to women, our ability, giftedness, and potential to excel in many roles other than childbearing, child rearing, and homemaking. What we also know, however, is that we can be a better example, even for ourselves, if we try. As I was speaking about being a member of Parliament, not surprisingly, the subject of ethics came to mind. And the words, "everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial," from 1 Corinthians. And I was thinking about the simple act of giving and receiving gifts, and pointed out that as a public representative, one has to consider carefully just what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in the circumstances, and always declare what has been received. And this, to a degree, also applies to women and men in business, and particularly women who are stepping into spaces that they hadn't previously occupied. And this is not a rule to penalize MPs, but to protect them from being used by unscrupulous people and from any allegations of corruption and bribery. Being in a political party full of pastors and preachers, at the same time, I was aware that receiving financial gifts was something they would not automatically see as potentially problematic. MPs are under a lot of scrutiny, and how we spend our money, how we dress, our health, behavior, words can all be potentially newsworthy and made to look questionable if people are given half the chance. I learned to consider how something would look if it were to become media headlines. I often use the phrase, there's probably a hill that we're all going to die on. I mean, we all know we're going to die at some point in time, and the challenges that we face. And there'll be a time that comes when something is important enough to us to stand our ground and even die in that cause. But we should be careful just not to die on any old hill, and this would be a place. So to cut your career short, your business opportunities short, just because we don't think a little bit ahead. I did, in fact, eventually make major headline news, and thankfully it was for something I can be proud of. It was a private members bill which was passed by both houses of parliament and signed into law by the president of South Africa. And of course, you'll see I have a slide further down there that would apply to that as well. I don't know if they're going up or if they're just static.
No, they're going down. Which one do you want? We are here, reputation, right?
We can just slide through all of them. And yes, and then it would get to reputation.
Yeah, we've been on ethics.
Okay, cool. So this Labour Laws Amendment Bill empowers fathers to be present in their children's lives to a greater degree, and is meant to encourage greater participation and responsibility as men bond with their new babies. It's also meant to empower women as men learn to share in childbirth, childcare, and other domestic responsibilities. And of course, while children are meant to be the greatest beneficiaries of this legislation, providing hope for future generations, I do believe it is also going to help engender greater respect and care across gender lines. Nevertheless, there are those who still took shots at me and tried to cast aspersions to create headlines for themselves. So on the one hand, you have to have a thick skin, but on the other hand, we don't need to actually give people, you know, make it easy for people. So something I have always felt strongly about, for me, and to be my own person, I must take responsibility for what I say and do. And that, in that sense, I'm referring to resisting the temptation to blame other people. And I see it something like this. Just as God is not impressed by the words, "the woman made me do it," I don't think that he's going to be impressed with "the man made me do it." And for that matter, not so impressed with "the party made me do it." So this, of course, will take courage and is easier said than done. But it is important to remember. And then at the same time, it's just as beneficial, and has been for me over the years, Harry Truman's comment that it is amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. So while you have to take the credit for the stuff that you probably get wrong, there's a lot of other good stuff that you'll do that people will get on board if they can get their little moment in the sun. And if you're prepared not to take the credit for it, you can take them along with you where you want to go. So that helped me a lot through the years before I got to Parliament. There's a difference between being famous and being great. Fame does not necessarily require humility, but greatness does. Even a degree of greatness. So depending on what you're going for, humility could be key. I'm thinking here about the fact that I sadly benefited little from the Democratic Alliance's input in Parliament, because their arrogant approach simply shut my ears. On the other hand, speakers who valued humility had a greater chance of getting and holding my attention. And I say valued humility because humility is not something we can just do. We can't turn it on and off. But when you value humility, it comes across in the way you speak, in the way you behave. Arrogance, of course, should not be confused with confidence, as there is something compelling about a person who has self-confidence. But especially a self-confidence that's balanced with the knowledge that they're human and fallible and can be wrong. I found it interesting that behind people with self-confidence, there's often a pattern of discipline and a strong work ethic, coupled with positive attitude. Being generous, another quality I see in those who make an impact. It's not just about giving materially, but giving people the benefit of the doubt, second chances, and so much more. Being gracious and kind in situations where you could more easily be the opposite. When I see or hear people being what I call small-minded, petty, or bigoted, for example, I'm sorely tested in the realm of being gracious. The time referred to opposition members as crybabies, who need to learn to take what they so easily dish out. And I think that's something we need to remember. A lot of us, we can dish it out, but then we can't take it. So if we get into the area of dishing it out, we should actually be able to take what comes back our way. So while it is imperative for the majority to respect the job of opposition to hold them accountable, in my view, opposition should respect the job of the majority to actually govern. And that was a really important thing for me in terms of where I was seated for many years. Something small but powerful that I noticed over the years was that when a female MP would propose something in a committee. Sorry, have we gone offline?
No, we are here.
Okay. I think I've lost you from this side. Some years later, in a committee would make a point of amplifying their contribution by reiterating, for example, as the Honourable Dudley said, etc., etc. And some years later, I noticed an interesting anecdote reported in the Washington Post that when President Obama took office, 2/3 of his top aides were men. And women complained of having to elbow their way into important meetings. And when they got in, their voices were often drowned out. So female staffers adopted a meeting strategy that they called amplification. And when a woman made a point, other women would repeat it, giving credit to the author. And this forced the men in the room to recognize the contribution, and it denied them the chance to claim the idea as their own. And for me, this is also an example of the kind of generosity that I'm talking about. So, but for most women, and I thought this was important for us, is that for most women in the workplace, this phenomenon is all too familiar. A woman offers an idea in a meeting, but nobody notices or acknowledges it until a man later says the same thing. And now this is not just our imagination either, as decades of research back it up. Members of Parliament make laws, they discuss and debate government policy and other political and social issues. They consult with the people and do what they can to represent their views in Parliament. That's the people that they represent. They help people in their constituencies, they interrogate and approve the budgets of departments, check that public money is not wasted, and make sure that the work that government promises to do is being done. They do this and so much more. Men do this, women do this. There's not specific work at Parliament for women and specific work for men. We do this work, but we all do it as individuals. There is no Parliament without members of Parliament, just as there's no rugby match without rugby players. And being human, MPs, not unlike rugby players, behave in ways that require rules and a referee. The Speaker of the House is the principal office bearer of the National Assembly and the referee who is there to protect the rights of all members who are the representatives of the people of South Africa. And you'll remember Dr. Ndwale was the first Democratic Speaker of Parliament from 1994 to 2004, and she was highly respected by opposition parties who saw her as able to execute her duties fairly without fear or favour. Honourable Belega Mbete, on the other hand, who was Parliament's deputy during the second Parliament, Parliament's deputy speaker, was viewed as somewhat more partisan in her approach, When she became the second Speaker of Parliament in 2004, she had matured, but was never able to convince the opposition that she was there for them. And a big reason for this was the political office she held within her own party structures. In the last 20 years, the percentage of women in parliaments around the world nearly doubled, and women are increasingly taking on positions of power in civil society, political parties, local councils, parliament, the executive, the judiciary, and as heads of state. This increased participation of women in politics has, however, provoked more than a little resistance. In years gone by, I would have been unlikely to describe the many aggressive, sexist, condescending, and patronizing remarks aimed my way as violence, as often women do today, but there were certainly clear attempts to intimidate me as a woman. At one time, fairly early in my time at Parliament, crude and suggestive comments were aimed at me by an MP in the National Assembly. The MP, a majority party backbencher, had become relentless, and I felt I had no option but to report him to the Speaker. So I accused him of sexual harassment, although I was sure that the crude sexual suggestions had little to do with sex and far more to do with trying to silence me on a particular issue. Belega Mbeti, who was the Speaker of the National Assembly at the time, took the matter seriously and immediately called a disciplinary hearing. This was in stark contrast to the response that I had from the Chief Whip of my own party. The response of the multi-party disciplinary committee members was interesting too. The female MPs of opposition parties were suspicious of my motives and interrogated me fairly harshly. Admittedly, I suspect I may have responded in a similar fashion. The senior male MPs in the majority party, on the other hand, had zero tolerance for the behavior of their colleague. I was asked if I would accept a public apology in the National Assembly, and I agreed. I was not keen to see this foolish young man's career destroyed, and as a mother of 3 boys, I was inclined to want to let him off the hook with a warning. When the apology was delivered, it was accompanied by an attempt to justify his behavior. However, he was pulled up and told by the Speaker to deliver an unqualified apology, which he did. The comments and all harassment stopped, and I noticed he did not return to Parliament after the next election. I believe the swift response of the Speaker and the awareness within the majority party were instrumental in sending a clear message to others that gender-based intimidation would not be tolerated. An increase in the participation of women in lawmaking and other professional occupations and the way we conduct and express ourselves has helped change the way women are perceived. Men have for so long held these respected professional positions, and now women have the opportunity to gain that respect as well. While men as a group are not better than women, women as a group are not better than men either. It is not a competition. The fact that we have no future unless it is a shared future is never more true than in this matter. Both males and females have blind spots, and while it makes sense to balance the collective strengths and weaknesses of men and women, every woman and every man is uniquely individual, and they bring their own something special to the table, which has little to do with being male or female. We have much in common as females, but we are also unique and designed for many very different purposes. So generalizations are therefore not always useful. Having been each other's adversaries and champions in our often male-dominated environments, our minds need renewing as much as anyone else's. As a Christian by choice and a feminist by virtue of having lived my 68 years of life in a world with systems and traditions designed to sustain a male-dominated world, I've learned to appreciate the sacrifices and achievements of those who stood up for women on many fronts. I am, however, aware of the remaining strongholds in much of our thinking that still disempower us as women. As empowered as I have been by virtue of the fact that I was born white in a colonized family, it has taken courage to confront gender equity issues on the home front and in the workplace. It has also required wisdom to know when and how to do it. In recognizing our value and giving ourselves and each other permission to be ourselves, we will be empowered and will empower each other. Being ourselves, however, does not, in my mind, mean being less intentional about it. People communicate not only through words, but through actions, through facial and bodily expressions, hygiene, lifestyle choices, and the way we dress. By all means, we should be free to convey whatever message we want to in the way we communicate. But conveying unintended messages is disempowering, and each of us has some control over what people see and hear. In this way, we have some influence over how people are likely to respond to us. When I graduated from wearing sandals to wearing stilettos in Parliament, I realized how subconsciously people viewed it as a sign of respect, respect for myself and others, and I got respect tenfold in return. I also realized how my thoughtlessness with regard to my appearance had conveyed a disrespect for the institution of Parliament, and my efforts increased my own respect, and hopefully others, for this remarkable institution and People's Parliament. In closing, I'm reminded of something the Pope said a while ago on empowering young women that I thought brought much needed balance and perspective to this important topic. He said what it should not lead to, that's empowerment, is a type of emancipation that, in order to occupy the space stolen by the masculine, abandons the feminine with its priceless elements. I wholeheartedly agree that girls must be allowed to be girls and women must be free to be women, as unique and individual as we all are. Authenticity, or simply being who we were created to be, I believe, is the #1 key to success and how we will be empowered to make the specific impact only we can make. I hope I've provoked now enough to inspire a conversation that renews our energy and drive en route to finding our real selves and our God-given purpose. Now I'm looking forward to our conversation and any questions that you would like to ask.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Let me just sort out here the sharing.
I've lost us, so I'm not sure what to click on to get back to be able to look at you.
Right, so go back to agenda, then stream again. Agenda and stream.
I'll fiddle as you keep talking.
Yeah, I know, that's what we're all doing. Like I said, this is a brand new platform that we are all learning how to use it, and it's quite interesting. But thank you so much for an inspiring message, an inspiring presentation, and for sharing your experience of being at Parliament. And you highlighted quite very important point, you know, being famous versus being great, the ethics aspect and the generosity, and you know, how to speak up when you are being intimidated as women, you know. So there is actually a number of issues that you have brought up that I think you know, other fellow attendees, and I see there are some politicians here as well, that maybe they could ask questions, they could engage with you, they could actually throw a word or two to support what you are saying. So fellow participants, can I call on you now? Unmute yourself. Let's engage, Cheryllyn, on how we can improve. How do we, basically the aim of this meeting is how do we ensure that women emerge more in numbers to participate in politics, because policy making, for us to change things, we need to change it through policy. And the more women we can have at policy making positions, the better the future will look for us, as we are on the theme, the future is female. Anyone, I would like to hear from the participants now. Can we hear from you now? Any question?
Everybody's wanting to relax on their Saturday afternoon.
Not really. All right, but while we are there and we're waiting for other people to basically comment and send their questions, I would like to really focus on the issue of intimidation as women. And you mentioned something very important when it comes to basically trying to silence, to use basically sexual harassment as a way to silence women. And I think we are seeing quite that happening more and more, not only in politics, but also in the corporate and the business space, where we are seeing, you know what, for you to get something that you need for you to grow, you know, they want you to give something in exchange. And how do we encourage more and more women to actually be open and speaking about what they are facing in their working space?
Well, I think what I tried to sort of touch on there was how important it is for us, first of all, to renew our own mind. You know, in other words, that we have to really believe that it's not acceptable to be spoken to in that manner. Before we're actually going to take or to do anything about it. And as, for example, the woman who is sitting on that committee, when we say we want increased participation of women, do we want increased participation so that women can be suspicious of other women in those circumstances? No, we want other women who have also understood very clearly we do not have to be spoken to in that manner. And there is a way of helping other people who are not keeping up with the 21st century actually have to keep up with the 21st century and where we are today in terms of our gender relations. So first of all, renewing our own minds, being sure in ourselves, because, you know, I'll mention, for example, there was a survey done not so long ago in South Africa. And one of the questions that they asked men and women was, is it okay for a man to hit his wife? And you won't believe it, but the most women answered that it is okay in certain circumstances. So that gives you some indication that we've ourselves have a long way to go of really understanding we may have grown up in that situation, but we're not in that situation anymore, and it's not okay. So we can calmly make a stand, take it to where it needs to go. And as I say, even if there are certain women who are not yet where they need to be in their thinking, there will be others who have been brought up to speed. And that, in that instance, for me, it was the men in the majority party who had an awareness, because obviously the party had made sure. But it's also a good thing for us to know that in our companies, in our businesses, in our political parties, we do need to focus on these issues. We need to make sure that people's minds are renewed and that they have greater understanding of the fact that behavior that our mothers and our grandmothers accepted is not acceptable today. And we have every right to make it clear that we will not accept that behavior.
Good. All right. Now, thank you so much. I think they just relayed there. Thank you so much for that answer. So let's again attempt to get our participants come on board and engage with you. But while we're waiting for them, there's really something that strikes me. I'm just a citizen and I'm not a politician. And comes the election, we need to choose who we want. We want to be to represent us basically at Parliament. And what I've seen, and I've seen this across Africa, not only in South Africa, I've seen across Africa where people say, you know what, we have chosen you the last time, we have elected you, but when you went to Parliament, you made yourself famous and you forgot about us. How do we ensure that when women get there, they focus on the real issues faced by their constituencies? What would be your advice on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to take office knowing that the office doesn't belong to us. that it belongs to those who put us there. And this shouldn't be the party. We need to know that people voted for that party, and that party at that time felt your voice was going to represent those people. We need to go in there knowing that we are not going there to nurse our seat for the next 10, 20, 30 years. We're going there to do whatever we need to do in that 5 years. Now, sometimes 5 years, it takes 5 years to get the lay of the land, and you only really come into your own in the next 5 years. So please God, it's a good thing to be wise about that, is also so that you are there to be able to make the greatest impact. However, what would silence people, or at least put people in a position where they're actually saying things more to please the party than to please the people that they know that they are personally representing. So I think that is important. You can't love your job more than loving the fact that you have this opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of those who have sent you to Parliament.
Thank you so much for that. So yeah, I think the issue of really getting there and thinking about who has put you there is actually very important for women politicians, right?
And telling the truth, because there are parties that don't necessarily tell the truth, and they're there to create, to make certain other parties look bad and them look good, etc., etc. So there will be a distortion of certain facts. And I think that when we go, no matter what party we go in, and hopefully now we'll have the opportunity of going in as independents as well, that we will be able to actually speak the truth and not fan the flames of just heaping negative on someone else at the expense of people knowing exactly what is going on and the reality of the situation. Very often things are blown out of proportion that don't need to be blown out of proportion, and then other things that are important get swept under the carpet.
Thank you so much for that. You've touched another point which is very important, that sometimes when we get to a position of power, we abandon our feminine touch. I think feminine touch, as you were saying, is very important. You know, just to be woman, you can be who you are in a position of strength, but without losing your feminine touch. How do you basically encourage more women to keep their feminine touch while being effective in what they are doing?
Oh, definitely. I touch on this in my book as well, which is, I recall a couple of things, and one is, of course, speaker Belega Mbeti. She was amazing, and in the early days, it used to bother me because I was sort of, I suppose, trying to keep pace with men, and I felt like I had a responsibility not to let the side down for women. So I wanted to be toe for toe up there, and for me, some of that was not necessarily paying much attention to my makeup for work, or wearing flatter shoes so I could walk longer and show no stress and whatever. But the truth is that, and I always did a good, diligent job, but people didn't actually notice. And the interesting thing was, once they actually started to notice me as a person, they were more aware of the work that I was doing, and my work had a greater impact. So, and for them to notice me, I had to stop trying to be something else. I could just be me. I could be the girl that I was, the woman that I was. I could wear what brought out who I was as a person, and not the one in competition with men in that space. So that was very interesting, and I do actually credit not just Belega Mbeti, but also other members that were in the majority party, often women who were a little along in years, but they used to be so meticulous about dressing carefully. And I used to think, why would they do that to themselves? They walk, we on oversight trips, and we're walking upstairs and down this, it's got to be, and it's hot and it's whatever. And, you know, but I realized once I started actually taking very seriously that this was a serious institution, and it was doing an incredible work for the people of South Africa, and we needed to actually give it the respect that it deserved. Otherwise, we were doing ourselves a disservice. And once I started reflecting that in the way that I dressed, my job actually became easier. So people just react to you in a different way. They respond to you in a different way. And there's just a kind of a recognition of when you're respecting other people, if you're respecting the place you work, you actually get that respect back. And it empowers you. It actually did amaze me at how empowered I felt on those little changes. And as you say, doing my job as a woman, not trying to be anything other than who I was. And that didn't mean that I needed to be some kind of cliche of a woman. I was always very purposefully me, because I never did fit into the role of the average woman. I mean, I remember going to Bible study groups at some point where they would say, you know, men think this and women think that. And I'd think, oh my goodness, are they saying I'm a man and my husband's a woman? Or men like to do this and women like to do that. And I'm thinking, I can't stand the kitchen and cooking, and my husband loves it. And, you know, those sort of things. So there's no ways that I've ever felt like I fit into the cliche, what should we say, the 20th and 19th century version of woman. But there's still a femininity that's attached to who we are, no matter how we wired and the roles that we're supposed to pick up on.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for that. There's also another issue that you have brought up, which is very, very important. The negative headlines. How do we ensure that women in leadership position try to basically avoid negative headlines? Because I feel that is important. You know, for me, and this is just me, my reputation, money cannot buy it. You know, so I try, but, you know, by all means, to stay away from anything that will jeopardize my reputation. And how do you, and I think you mentioned that you have tried so many times to stay away actually from negative press or negative media or negative headlines. You know, how do you encourage more women to do that?
Yeah, and when I say negative, I'm not meaning, what I mean is, there would be positive. I would want to stand for what's positive, in the sense that I will be happy to be accused of those things. You know what I mean? So we know in this world today that you can be you can have negative headlines, but you could still be happy that you said the right thing, did the right thing. But, you know, I think of Jacob Zuma here, and you know, with all his faults, he also offered himself up on a plate to people. You know, he was actually, he is an intelligent man, but he would just play into people's little caricatures of him or whatever. So he just seemed to be quite happy with giving the negative news. So what I'm saying is we can do that for sure, but it doesn't end up well. There's people are limited to what they see, what they hear. So the perception we get of somebody is in terms of what we see, what we hear, what they're doing, etc., etc. And I think, for example, now of some of our leading women holding like our public protector, etc., and thinking of how important it is, even our work. And I found this was important for me, that even when you can't control any other circumstances, what you can do is you can put in the extra time. You can fact check, you can make sure that you're not going to speak out and make a fool of yourself, which will reflect on other women, that you make sure that you know what you're saying. A lot of people will just want to shoot from the hip, say what it is, get the attention, get the media thing. But if you do not know what you're saying is absolutely correct, rather don't say it until you know it's absolutely correct. These are the kind of things. So sometimes people are a little media hungry, and they can get into trouble because of that. And it's actually better to be cautious in the sense that just respect people enough to be able to open your mouth and actually say what you have fact checked and truthfully you absolutely understand to be true. Are we frozen?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. Because I think it is important as women to, yeah, to actually really protect our reputation and, you know, for the benefit of our constituencies and ourselves.
And there's so much rumoring, and
there is also another,
you know, these sort of things are gone, so people can get caught up in something that has very little to do with reality and find themselves in a problem, defending things that are indefensible, and also just so I think the important thing is just for us to be able to take the time to think before we speak.
Thank you so much about that. Thank you so much for your feedback, for your answer, and I'm sure this will empower so many women that will listen to your advice. Let's now touch the issue of ethics. As we know, as citizens, or you know, just as people, we are expected to be leaders full of ethics. I think ethics, integrity, you know, honesty are basically the core characteristics that are expected of the leader, of any leader. And you highlighted something very important. When you touch the issue of ethics, I'm talking about that, you know what, sometimes even just receiving a gift from someone might compromise the issue of ethics. How do you see that? How do you distinguish just a normal gift? Someone can give me a gift, you know, and there's basically nothing wrong with that. But how do, and I know I can see that there is a fine line that easily can move to the other side. How do you prevent women to be caught up in that situation?
Well, I think first of all, by understanding that how easy it is, because we can get on our high horse and be in our little glass towers and be pointing fingers and throwing stones at other people, but we're actually in great danger than ourselves. If we understand how easy it is, I think it's much safer for us. For example, a lot of people at Parliament who I have highly respected over the years, who, for them, it would have started with, for example, because, you know, whether you like it or not, people think that MPs earn a lot of money, but they don't, and their job is people, and everybody's got a drama and a crisis, and particularly financial issues. So, and you're the first person that they'll run to. So when you have, say, got no money to send your child on some trip or to school, and the friends around you happen to be businessmen because you're in that world, or a woman and other politician, or whatever. When you in that place and someone says, come on, this will just, here, let me just give you this bit to pay for that. You say, no, I can't take it. But why? You need it now. I've got it. Let me just give you this gift. Now, of course, once you've done that, when that person needs you to do something else for them, they'll say, but what about that? And then it puts people on the spot. And so these things don't start big. They start where it's so feasible. Like, for example, if a shop wants to give you, if a business wants to give you a discount on your tires for your 4x4, and we know a particular politician who had that thing, and it backfired because those people were linked to something else that was going down at Parliament. So, but you know, you can imagine us as Christians in the world, you know, where pastors work, whatever, and someone wants to give you a discount on your tires, great. But now you happen to be a member of Parliament as well, and you happen to be sitting on a committee where that's going to come up in a few months. You wouldn't know, but the people doing it, no. And so you've happily accepted your discount on your tires. Praise God, here we go. and then you find these things. And this is why what does help is actually declaring those things, so that it never looks like you were trying to hide that in the first place. So that's the first thing. The first thing is know how easy it is. The second thing is declare whatever gets given to you, so that there is no foundation for an accusation that you were trying to hide it. Thirdly, of course, you've got to have your eyes open, and you've got to be able to have the strength of character when you see where that's leading to make it stop. A lot of our politicians in the past few decades have been people who had been groomed, in a sense, from before they became politicians. People with money were having them go overseas to do training and wonderful things that we've benefited from in terms of our country, because this was growing people into the positions that they needed to take. But there was a lot more going on. There were businessmen on that side of the world, and sometimes it's just being the best friend and helping you out of some tricky situation. Other times it's supplying women and this and that, and having some hold over people. So these are things that people who have not, if you're not streetwise, if you're not business-wise, if you're not politics-wise, you will perhaps think that people are doing certain things because they like you, they like your face, da-da-da. But there's a lot of those people are people who have got their money a certain way, and they've got a plan and a purpose, and these are things that they do to make sure they've got the right people in the right places, so they can call in what they need to call in when they need to call it in.
Well, thank you so much for those 3 tips that, you have given us. I think we definitely need to be streetwise. We definitely need to declare, and we need to be aware. We need to be aware that it can start just as a small thing, and that can have a negative impact.
And I think
great. Now
when we've taken that small step in the wrong direction, that's the time to open up and say, I did this, it's wrong. Because if you try and cover that up, it becomes bigger, and you're covering more and more and more. So what happens a lot of times is people are just covering some tiny, minute little error of judgment, and it ends up they're getting into deep water because of trying to cover up that initial little mistake.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And I think we are learning a lot from your own experience, because what you're sharing with us is actually from experience. You've been there, you've done that, and you can give you can give the right advice to the next generation that are following your footsteps. Now we are on the core of our topic on how do we increase the participation of women in politics. How do we ensure? And this is not only for South Africa, we're looking at across Africa. As we can see now, they started showing some countries that are improving, like Rwanda is doing very well, and some other countries, South Africa is also doing very well, but many other countries are still lagging behind. How do we ensure massive participation of women in politics?
Well, I think my talk covered a lot in terms of what we can do in terms of helping other people to have confidence in us, because that's important. So the people won't always know the full detail, but they'll know what they see, what they hear, that kind of thing. So that was the one side of it. The other side of it is that we must then have confidence in each other and vote for each other. We must nominate each other. We must be there for each other. We must know that mistakes will be made, and when mistakes are made, we won't be just chopping off everybody at the neck. We do need to actually be there to figure out how could that be done better, and let me do it with you. So we do need to be there for each other. We in South Africa, I've noticed a huge tendency for people to behave as if they are perfect and everybody else is imperfect, and a lot of finger pointing and a lot of quickly talking bad about people and talking down about people, when in actual fact, every one of us can make mistakes. Every one of us can be wrong at some point, and particularly if it's in somebody's interest to make that bigger than it is, they will turn a light on it to make it look negative. So now, as women, we should not be part of that where we actually quickly pulling people down. We need to understand a situation before we comment on it and before we get on the bandwagon. But that point about voting for each other, this is huge. You know, you'll see, for example, how incredible the majority party has been in terms of putting women, because we've had that proportional vote system, that they've been able to put people onto party lists, and they've made sure that the gender issues are balanced. But
the quota system.
Yeah. But if you go to a Congress like the last one, where Ramaphosa was voted in, and you notice the votes are not for women. The women are out. So even within a party contest, so even a party who so obviously understands the value of not seeing women as less of a resource and a leader. But if you look at the culture within the party, when it's open to a Congress like that, you will notice that it's not where the leaders' heads are at. There's still that tendency to vote for males and not for females. So yeah, so we can help each other by being the kind of woman somebody would want to vote for, and then we need to also, though, see that something in someone else that might be different to us, but it's special, and give that the opportunity, get behind that, support that. I gave that little example about the amplifying each other's voice. For example, now we're in the social media world. We can amplify the voices of those female politicians who we feel have got something to say and are saying it in a way that people will get it if they are exposed to it. And if they're not saying it in a way that people will get it, somehow finding people to come around those people to help them be able to put across the value in terms of what value they're going to make, so that people will understand it. So we've got great opportunities in our social media opportunities to amplify each other's voices, each other's image, and exactly what you're doing here, and yeah, so that we can know, first of all, who's there to be able to support, and so well done. This is a really wonderful initiative.
Thank you so much. And I think you really gave quite good points there. I think just the support, you know, just looking at the population stats, it's actually showing in Africa, for instance, women represent 52% of the population. So imagine if just women could be giving support to other women in politics or any other positions at the corporate, in business. If we can just support one another, I think definitely we will empower more women that we can think of. We cannot imagine how strong and how powerful is a voice of a woman, and especially considering that women represent over half of the population of any country, you know. So if women can just start focusing on supporting one another, obviously rightly supporting one another, we also don't want to set women for failure. We want to make sure that you know, capable women deserve, when they deserve a position, they are given that position, and we can give them support.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because nothing's worse than giving people an opportunity to actually fail, because that reflects on everybody. And then people have less confidence to actually get behind the next woman. So you do want to make sure that people are ready for that challenge, and that, yeah, that we're going to stay the course.
Yes, no, thank you so much. Then in closing, one last question that you mentioned quite clearly, saying that members of parliament are quite scrutinized. Eh? Their expenses are scrutinized, and even the way they dress. Tell me about that. You know, I honestly did not know that even the way you dress as members of parliament, you are actually, there are people or a big brother that is watching over, you know, the way you look, the way you dress, the way you spend. Tell us about that in conclusion.
Well, look, obviously, budgets are open to the public and open to the media. And so I'm not even just talking personally, but for example, as an MP, what you're spending in terms of your constituents and constituency and that kind of thing. So that is all public knowledge as well, apart from the fact of us needing to declare anything we receive over and above the money that we spend. People will watch. If you are not making any impact, or you're not making any enemies. I remember seeing in a little cartoon once with my grandchildren where they said, you can't be a superhero if you don't have your arch enemy. so none of us are going to be superheroes without having an arch enemy. So if you're on the way to be a superhero, you will have arch enemies, and if you give them ammunition, they will use that against you. And I think of little things like, for example, you know, on the opening of Parliament, where people have dressed slightly inappropriately or whatever. And whilst I would come out defending women's right to be there, and absolutely it's unacceptable for people to comment on people's dress. I still know that if you give people that opportunity, they will take it. And once something's been said, it's hard to take it back. Well, you can take it back, but it's still painted a picture, and people have still laughed about it, and that person is still now less in other people's eyes. So it's something that shouldn't happen, but it will. If it's going to benefit somebody else's agenda in some way. And sometimes the agenda is just pulling Parliament down and to mock or to belittle or to show up an MP that where it can actually paint the others with the same brush. Well, that's what people will do. You will see also when people, what should we say, exaggerate. When there's been a indiscretion in terms of a decision that was taken, or some spending on money, but often it's also people new to Parliament who don't know the system yet, who have actually done so. And I'll give an example, which there was a time when there was a travel, they were after MPs because of travel things. And I can remember thinking, oh my goodness, there's me, I'm next, they're going to be showing up, because we used to get these like travel coupons, and then you'd have to fill it out for any trip you were going to make, and it would have to go to the travel agent, etc., and then the travel agent would say, oh no, don't worry, I'll fill it out for you, and you send the vouchers off to them. So I can remember having done that a couple of times in the early days. And thank God this other thing blew up, not for other people, but for me, to realize you cannot do that. But it was really completely out of ignorance, you know, and with the best will in the world, people learn the steps and the processes and the pitfalls as you go along. So I'm not big on chopping people off at their first mistake. I didn't happen to get into trouble because they obviously didn't do anything with my coupons, thank God, but they could have. And it could have looked absolutely horrendous. So I'm a little more lenient when people have fallen into those pits, and I feel that those that learn from those things are extremely valuable to us, because other people coming up through the ranks are going to have to learn their own lessons. So let's not actually chop people off who have learned, know better. They're wiser, older and wiser. So, sorry, that should have been off. So that was the kind of thing. We can fall into those traps, and of course there's people who then become serial wrongdoers. You know, if they get away with this, get away with that, then and then you've got a much bigger problem. But when it's not a serial problem, when it's a genuine mistake initially, and people show a willingness to learn, let's keep our experience and let's grow each other and have the kind of country that has learned, sometimes the hard way, but that we know better, and we know because we've had the experience.
Thank you so much. And just on a more lighter side, you were talking about high heels at Parliament. Do
Yes.
you always have to wear high heels?
Absolutely not. No, and I used to just go to Parliament in sandals because that was easy for me to get around. That was great, and they were nice sandals, so they were fine. But the thing is that it is just, there is something I noticed, and that was the people who completely disrespect everything about Parliament. They want to pull it down, and I kind of got to blame opposition politics for this. I feel that they've done our country a huge disservice in pulling down the very important things like the institution of Parliament. So now there's a way of doing oversight that doesn't have to actually trash the very thing that you're trying to build and make better. So it's that people, though, when all we have is to show that in the way we speak, in the way we dress, in the way we behave towards other people. And so I realized it was part of the whole package.
Wow. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cheryllyn Dudley, for sharing with us on how we can really increase the participation of women in politics. And the future is female. And for the future to be female, we need more women in policy making space and policy making institutions, so that we can influence actually on how we can ensure that more and more women, capable women, are emerging in the position, in decision-making positions across Africa. As we know, we are talking about post-COVID now. We're looking, yes, COVID had a negative impact, and we're looking at, you know what, how do we move from here? How do we, basically improve, from the impact of COVID? And you've given quite a number of tips. And for those countries that are, preparing for elections, I'm sure they will really ensure that they support women, that they vote for women, that they are, they speak for other women, so that we can ensure a massive participation of women in Parliament. Now, thank you so much for that. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, Dr. Charmaine. Let me try to mute, so maybe I could get you. Oh, sorry, I cannot mute. Hello? All right, Dr. Charmaine is muted. So any other question from the participant? If there's no question, then we can just move to networking. We can chat to each other. I will just take a moment. I think our time is up. Yes. So I will just take a moment to basically explain to you what we are what we are busy doing with this platform. So the LWA Lounge platform is basically a brand new platform that we have kind of started from scratch, or we are building it from scratch. And what it is, we believe that the world is going digital, and we will not, I mean, we are not going backward, and we are really just trying to find a way to catch up. So this platform, and it's now just time for networking and B2B, so I'm just introducing you to the platform, is that it offers more than just an event, more than just a meeting, more than just hosting an event like this. It is built around the other version of Zoom, and that's what's the tool that we use for speaking. But what we are doing here is to offer our African audience especially, but also the global stakeholders, really a platform of engagement. So I will take you through some features on this platform that you can see how this platform can actually help you, can actually make you grow your businesses, or grow your network, or yeah, basically grow your network. So you will see, and I just want to take you, if your Zoom is maximized, I would like you to minimize it so that you can get to the page where you you entered from, the info, stream, and participants. So I'll take you just through some features that you will see. Just look at on your left hand side of the screen, you've used agenda. So agenda is actually the main door where we enter to our event. And on the agenda, you will see info. So under info, you will see the information about the event or about the session. And for this one, for instance, we had 3 sessions. So this is basically the agenda, like your normal event where you have your program or the agenda. Then under participants, you will see that the participants that are here present on this call. If you click there, you will see them. But let's go back to our left-hand side. So under agenda, you will see my event. My event basically will, that way you will find all the events that you are registered for on this platform. Like for now, we don't have any upcoming events, but there will be one next week or so. We're just finalizing our summit. It will be coming. So if you register for the event, and sometimes we have more than one event, and you registered for one of them, it will be there, and you will find all the details. Then under event, you'll find the attendees. Under the attendees, you will see everyone literally that have registered for this particular event. And what is important is that if you click on any of the attendee, you will have an option to connect. So you can basically request connection with the particular person that you want. And you can even book a meeting. So you can actually have a meeting as you are attending the event. You can have a live meeting with the person that you want to connect with. Why would you connect with a person? Generally, it's based on their profile. You will look at their profile and say, hey, I'm interested to connect with this person. You know, maybe let me connect with them for whatever reason that you want. It could be for business purposes. Maybe you want just to expand your network. So you will be able to do this on this platform. Under attendees, you will see speakers. So for any event where we have more than one speakers, or just one like today, you will be able to connect with that particular speaker, and or the particular speaker that you want to connect with, by just viewing their profile or connecting with them. So you will see the profile, you will view the profile of the speaker or the speakers, And should you want to connect with them, you will be able to connect with them just by being on this platform. Under there, you will see sponsors. So if you have more than one sponsors, you will basically, all of them, they will be listed here. So this platform is, like I was saying earlier on, is more than just an event. So more than just holding a meeting or having an event. So it's basically a virtual version of a real event, where we normally have sponsors, we have exhibitors. So this allows you to still giving the sponsor the mileage, giving the sponsor the basically the exposure. So if you click under sponsor, you will be able to see the sponsors details and the information, and you will be able to connect with them. Under sponsors is the exhibitors. We always host event where we invite our, exhibition event where entrepreneurs, companies, they want to exhibit their the product, services, companies. This is the same. It's basically the same. So on this page, you will have that all the exhibitors will have their own space, they will populate their own information, and as attendees, you can go to exhibitors room, which is where we are right now, and you can actually visit all the exhibition stands, and you can see who's doing what, and you can connect with them. All the details will be there, and you could actually connect with them. And I know this is actually, quite a complicated house with different rooms. And if you get lost, just go back to agenda, because that way actually you will be able to see the agenda, and you will be able to go back on the stream to see the basically to see the screen, and to again communicate with other people. Under the stream, we went back to agenda, and we are now on info stream. Under the stream, you can actually chat. You will see the chat, you will see Q&A, you will see polls, you will see my note. So you will be able to chat there, hi, and that will basically go to all attendees that are there. So you can actually chat with the audience directly right in front of you. You can ask questions, and when the program has polls, they will run polls on here, and there you will also see my notes. So my notes basically just allows you to make notes on the conference. Maybe you want to make points of what you've been hearing, and you don't have a pen and paper. This allows you to just make your notes there, and before you log out, just make sure that you copy your notes and paste it on your desktop, as it does not save personal notes, because these notes are basically for you. So in a nutshell, this is the highlight of the platform that we are creating. It's a brand new platform. We've launched it on 27th of Feb through our first event. So it's still a work in progress. We're still improving, trying to improve, trying to add new features, trying to add new information, and really trying to improve how people use the platform. But this is like I say, it's really a bit different from just your meeting room. It's really like your social media platform, where you need to have your username, you need to have your password. So that is very important. And you don't necessarily need a meeting link for you to basically log in. You can just use the sign up link, the general sign up link that you have, or any meeting link that you have. It will still send you to the platform. Even if the event is over, it will still send you to log in, where you can log in and enter the platform, and you will still be connected with, or you can still connect with the attendees or the people in this network. You will still be able to connect with them. So you don't only do the networking during the meeting. You can do the networking at your own time when you have a chance. Just log in. And this is basically the best way to get used to the platform, is by, you know, when you have a chance, just log in, connect with people, just like we are doing with Facebook. We are inviting, but this is more event related kind of platform that we have created. And I really hope that in the next few months, this platform will be yeah, we'll make history. It's brand new. People are still getting used to it, and but we believe that it will actually change the way we do virtual event. And we are looking at big events that will be hosted on this platform, and big conferences. But for now, we are just training ourselves, having small events where people just get to learn to use the platform. And I think that's what the platform is all about. And some features, even myself, I'm still learning to actually use them. But yeah, I'm sure we can teach one another. Maybe one day you go in and you look at other features that I haven't used. You know, you will be able to share with others basically how to use this platform. I think I'll be just counting on a word of mouth for people to actually share with others on how to use the platform. We are trying to create as much information as possible to show people how to use it, short videos, just information that we put out there on social media. And yeah, so we count on you for your ongoing support, and thank you so much. So we've come to the end of our program for today. And the remainder of time could be just for networking. If you want to remain in a room, we're not going to close the room now. You can remain there, you can chat, or you can just explore. Just explore the platform, and you look at all the features and what you know, what it can do for you, depending on what you want. What is more important is your profile, because people will like to connect with you based on your profile. So having your profile there, I think, is quite important. And having a picture is important. Updating your picture is important, because for me, like in any other social media, I don't connect with people that don't have pictures. I want to make sure that I see the face of the person before I could trust and connect with them. Yeah, no, thank you so much. And yeah, we look forward to the next event, which will take place on 30th. Hopefully next week there will be another small one. But on the 30th of March, to close the Women's Month, we're going to have a summit. That will be really our first big event that we are preparing. And we look forward to having you again, and also you can educate one person about our platform, because moving forward we will only be using this platform. I know it will take time for people to get used to it, but eventually all these other platforms that we're using, we also had to learn how to use them. And most of the time we actually did not get support from Zoom or from Google Meet, or from, we just learn by using them. And I'm sure this will be one of them as well. And this is for Africa, you know, so we really want to see as many entrepreneurs as possible to connect with each other and to connect with global stakeholders that will be signing up on this platform. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time and for attending this event. Thank you. And goodbye for now, though the room will stay open.